when I came first 30 years ago, I thought I had made enough money that I could do it myself. So I didn't ask anyone for money. And just that people here wanted the foundation's name to be George Foundation. I was not very much in favor of that. And for the first 15 years, I did everything I did here on my own with the money I had made in America. But then the 2008 came about. The after effects of that hurt me. And then Ajit joined me to raise money.
Welcome to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for people like you who care about the social impact of conscious companies and everyday heroes. Hear inspiring stories from those who put people and planet before profit and personal gain. You'll learn how you can make a difference, vote with your dollars, and get involved today. Here's your host, Karina Belizzi.
Hello and welcome to another interview episode of Care More, Be Better, a Circle B podcast. Each and every week, we invite you to care more about a specific issue so that together we can create a better world. As we get started today, I encourage you to visit our website, circleb.co, and sign up for our mailing list. For each new subscriber, we're planting a tree in collaboration with Forest Planet. While you're there, visit past episodes and take a peek under the hood of our eco shop. Proceeds from your shopping efforts help us to keep this show going. Plus, 1% of your purchases are donated to Earth First charities through our partnership with 1% for the Planet. Today, we're going to explore the topic of education access as we connect with Dr. Abraham George, a renowned philanthropist and social entrepreneur, best known for founding the Shanti Bhavan School in India. His work has benefited more than 15,000 people as he works to end India's cycle of poverty and their caste system. Dr. Abraham, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you for inviting me.
It's so amazing to have you here. Now, I understand that you served in the Indian Army, studied at NYU, and became a top finance executive with an illustrious career. So what led you to this particular shift and focus?
Well, Karina, if you would allow me a few minutes to explain what happened long ago. You are right. I was an officer in the Indian artillery, and this goes back many years. Soon after the Chinese invasion of India in the 1960s, I got my commission. I'm quite ancient, by the way. And I was sent to the border with China on the Tibetan side, high in the Himalayas, actually 14,000 feet, and it was the highest battleground anywhere in the world, actually. That is the passage through which China had invaded. Anyway, I was sent up there to establish a gun position there in the valley. So the Chinese, if they crossed, we could defend. And I was there for almost 10 months when I got blown up in an accident, dynamite accident, where I was trying to, dig into the mountains and it blew up on me. Anyway, during that time, I was I was alone. I was the only officer there. I was sent up there. And I used to climb the mountains and sit and ask myself, what am I doing here at the top of the world? Looking down, the sky is below me. And that was the time I read a couple of books, which were had a very big impact on me. One was by Albert Schweitzer. He is a German who won the Nobel Prize. He went to Gabon in Africa and set up a hospital for the tribes and did marvelous work. And I was fascinated as a young man of 18 years of age and very romantic, actually, to be in this forest with elephants and everything else. And he talked about service, and it had a major impact. And then later on, I read a book by Bertrand Russell, The History of the Western Civilization, in which he talks about there is nothing right about war. It's about what is left. And that was a interesting line. What is left? Nobody is left after the war, I guess. But anyway, And when this accident happened, I asked myself the question: This is the career I should have, killing people, and and whether I should, why was I saved? Why did I escape? And that is when I made a decision that I'll, work, make money, and devote my life to service. So this is the big story. And then I got an opportunity to come to America at a very young age. I mean, young age, 21, and went to NYU. You're right, and then later on, I started my own business. My whole goal at that time, all through the time, was to have enough money to start something like what I'm doing today, how I can serve people who are deprived. So that's my story, and that's the beginning.
Oh, what a wonderful beginning it is. And yes, you may not be as young as you once were, but the impact that you're having today is quite incredible. Now, your work with Shanti Bhavan School has been featured in a Netflix series, which I've had the privilege to watch a few episodes of. That's called The Daughters of Destiny. Tell me how that particular effort came to be, and what has the impact been of the show thus far?
Impact Green, yes, it was very unexpected. An Oscar award winner happened to hear about it. Vanessa Roth, she came and visited us, and then she decided to film the story of five girls. We didn't really give much importance to it. She was there for 7 years. 7 years they were shooting. Netflix was filming us, and they were there. The camera crew was there with the children growing up, so they could see the impact. And they went and visited their homes in the slums and everywhere else. And we didn't get to know what they were doing. It the night before it was screened, we were shown the film, and next day it was available throughout the internet, and it had a major impact on us. The world got to see the work we were doing. Where I am is right now, I'm in a remote village and in southern India, and another few months I'll come back to New York, New Jersey, and I'll be there for a couple of months, and then I return here. I've been doing it for the last 30 years. So the impact was tremendous. People came to know the story, and today it has generated a lot of interest on the part of people who want to do something of their own, who are looking for a purpose in life, uh, different, and people who feel very strongly about social justice, who feel strongly about poverty. So different types of people have come forward to help us.
Well, I have to say, I can see the impact through the stories, through watching them on Daughters of Destiny. We do also see you, not surprisingly, on film, and we meet, is it Aji George or Ahi? I wasn't sure how to pronounce that.
Ajit,
Aji.
Ajit is my son. My son.
Yeah. So is the George Foundation then an integrated family effort? How are you as a community serving with both the school, Shanti Bhavan, and beyond?
Right. That's a good question. When I came first 30 years ago, I thought I had made enough money that I could do it myself. So I didn't ask anyone for money. And just that people here wanted the foundation's name to be George Foundation. I was not very much in favor of that. And for the first 15 years, I did everything I did here on my own with the money I had made in America. But then the 2008 came about. The after effects of that hurt me. And then Ajit joined me to raise money. Actually, it was the best thing that ever happened. Very few people say that losing all the money in 2008 crisis is good for them. But actually, it just turned out to be very good because we created a community of people who were part of this mission as opposed to one guy trying it himself. This is not a cause that one should try to do it himself unless he's got a lot of money. But even then, you need the support of people to make it
And what do they
successful.
say? They say that, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And so I'm forgetting who should be credited with that. I can look it up, maybe put it in show notes, but it's something I often think about. I like to do solo work myself. And I feel like sometimes because you have such clarity of vision with what it is that you want to do, sometimes it is easier to get started on your own, but eventually you're going to need support no matter what it is. And the reality is that by doing that and by bringing in your son, you have a situation where this is something that will survive you, and you can rely on future generations to keep the fire stoked and this effort going. Now, I know that with India, I mean, I studied cultural anthropology and archaeology and prehistory much in my earlier academic career. I'm now in a PhD program in sustainability education. And when I was in that earlier career, I took this course, Cultures of India, with Triloki Pandey, who was an exceptional cultural anthropologist. And we read this book called The Untouchables, which was about this class of people that were a part of the official caste system, which has now supposedly been dismantled, but which still has its after effects alive and well in the community. In fact, I saw that back in 2015, CNN's New Delhi bureau chief, Ravi Agrawal, published an article with the headline, India's caste system outlawed but still omnipresent. So I have a question for you. Is it any better 9 years later?
Well, one could argue that it is better because many of them were able to get jobs from the industrial expansion in India. All the untouchable, quote unquote, untouchables were in the rural area mainly, and there are some in the urban areas too. And then with the industrial progress, they could get, you know, jobs as construction workers and so on. And so they moved out from the village into the urban slum. And I suppose they earn a little bit on a steady wages as opposed to seasonal jobs. So in that sense, yes. But remember one thing, and that is that India has instituted laws which says that you cannot discriminate on the basis of caste. Uh, and yet, the caste system was never banned. In fact, the government, one of the questions, if you apply for a government job, one of the first questions they ask you is, which caste do you belong to? So, so the 300 million people still there, they are invisible. A lot of them are in the villages. 70% of India's population, they are in the villages. And a good number of them are of lower caste.
Well, to me, I recently read a book called Caste, which was all about how essentially whether or not you have a defined caste system, we live in a society that is hierarchical, and that in that nature, when you live in a hierarchical society, you have castes. And sometimes those divide along racial lines, but often it's just socioeconomic. And so you're talking about people who, the haves and the have nots, or the maker class, and then the servant class. And so when you have that type of a system, you end up in a situation where it perpetuates itself. And so what I see that is that with this school, that you are working to dismantle that as hard as you can, while still identifying that if these children aren't exceptional, and I mean that in the kindest of ways, but if they don't really succeed in the coursework, it may still be hard for them to escape that spiral that they're stuck in. So I wonder what your thoughts are now after having run this school for a number of years, and if you even have some successes you can point to of, like, say you've positively impacted 15,000 people, but what does that look like today?
Okay. When I spent most of my life in America, and one of the reasons I was able to do well is I had the opportunity to start my own company, make money, and then doing what I'm doing today. I realized that what holds back the so-called untouchables is the fact that they are economically very poor. And social justice you cannot achieve without economic justice. First, they have to be successful. And so I thought about, when I was in NYU and so on, and I was taking courses in developmental economics and so on, I was asking myself the question, what is the solution to this? Going and preaching in churches or in temples and telling people to treat people in a just way is not going to make any difference. You got to empower them. The change has to come from within, and don't depend on government, don't depend on other people. So the solution I came up with was that I should take few children. I obviously can't do this on a very large scale, few children, and make them extremely successful, that they can go on to work in major companies, they can study in Ivy League schools, and so on. So today there are 12 children studying at Stanford, Duke, Princeton, and so on. They came from the hut, a small little hut, 10 feet by 10 feet, with no toilet, no kitchen. And it has never happened in the history of India that these children have excelled. And they are in these colleges, and good colleges in India, and in Microsoft, and ExxonMobil and companies like that. And what they are able to do, they are completely transformed their families' lives. They have built houses. They provide for their parents for food and clothing and medical insurance. They educate their siblings. And you're not talking about one or two. We're talking about 500 others who are going through our school or having gone through our school. And they in turn multiply that effect. Their siblings are now doing well because they are going to school. So the multiplicative effect is what makes this program successful. Apart from the fact that their self-esteem is improved, they are in fact very strong, and the village folks see them differently. They no longer treat them like untouchables because their houses are better. The children have built better houses for them, and they live reasonably well. So the caste system, in some ways, among at least these people, is breaking down. Number of the children that went through Shanti Bhavan school are married into middle class families, and some of them upper class families. Some of them married upper caste people, which would have never happened. So it is very exciting that it's a mini revolution of a silent revolution, I would say, quietly taking place, and it's nice to see these children doing well.
Well, I think what you just shared agrees with this idea that it's less a caste system today than it is one of socioeconomic and opportunity. So I think that's part of this dismantling of what had been a colonialistic growth around the world. But, another thing I have heard from friends who are of Indian origin is that it is really commonplace to do a little bit of what you've done. And I'm not saying like everyone goes back to India and starts a not-for-profit and serves community in this broad capacity, but often people who have the opportunity to become educated, let's say work in high tech in Silicon Valley, do so for a 25-year career, go back to India to take care of their families and are essentially there to support that next stage. And I think this gets to the root of a cultural difference between where we have been over the last few decades here in America, where we are very focused on the individual success and less so on the family unit. And so I have this kind of sneaking undercurrent like thought that creeps in around the fringes for me that, as we become a more global society and as more people become economically mobile and crossing cultures and things along those lines, that we might see that kind of shift. And that would be kind of my only concern, because I think there's something beautiful and righteous about, caring enough to say, okay, I've got my success and I've been able to save some money, and now I'm going back to my home culture that feels like home to me in a way that's different than living in America. I wonder what your thoughts are.
Well, the people who have come to America, and a lot of them, like me, they have had their children there and they're born in America. And that generation, the newer generation, is not so much interested in coming back. They are
They're
very,
American.
they are
you know.
American. My generation is vanishing very quickly
Hmm.
by virtue of age. Uh, but um, but what we are finding is that the younger generation, though they are not born in India, they are born in America, but their parents were Indians
Hmm.
of Indian origin.
And may
And
have
so
become
they
naturalized citizens, but they didn't originate here, right?
have, right. So they have
Okay.
some affinity towards India, and they have been there a few times with their parents. So they have a heart for the country, and they know what is happening with the underclass. And then, having been in America and seen and heard what it is to treat people as equals,
Mm,
and what is social justice, all these issues are debated in America, not in India. So these young people, my son Ajit and others, they are born and brought up with the idea that there is no distinction between peoples based on caste and all this nonsense. So they are willing to reach out and help. In my son's case, Ajit, he lives in Seattle, but he spends 3 4 months in India with me to help me, and then he raises money in America. We have a chapter in the U.S., this Shanti Bhavan chapter in the U.S., and that's how it's funded. Just so that you know, this may be of some interest to your listeners. 75% of the money we raise comes from America,
mm,
not from India. And they a good 60% comes from these younger people who were
mm,
born in the Americans.
mhm,
And the other 40 are those of non-ethnic, not they are not Indian of origin, and they reach out because of the social cause
mhm.
that we have undertaken. People are moved by that. Some of them come all the way to see what we are doing, and they are touched, and they go back and help us. So we have a wide range of people, both of Indian origin and non-Indian origin, who believe in social justice and equality and treatment of poor people, better treatment of poor people.
Yeah. Well, you have a fan and a representative in me as well. You're reminding me also of an earlier conversation I had. One of my first, I think it was in my first 20 episodes. I'm now over 200, in which I interviewed Lydia Camunto Bosire of 8B Education Investments. That's her not for profit. And what she does is that she is working to support the education journey of and of people out of Western Africa primarily because that's where she's from. But she was able to, essentially escape the poverty school system by winning a spot in a lottery, which enabled her to go to Cornell and I believe also to Cambridge, which enabled her to get her PhD and live in a new way. So now she's paying that forward by coming forward as a speaker and getting on stages and collaborating and ultimately raising funds that can support the education journey of these individuals who would otherwise not qualify for a lot of the scholarships and things along those lines. They're having to pay international tuitions, which are higher, generally speaking. They're also not necessarily able to qualify for loans because they don't have family history of wealth, right? And so it's just harder to make those leaps. So she had mentioned one thing that I thought was really interesting, and which is also coming up in my graduate studies at specifically Prescott College and sustainability education. She had mentioned this idea of brain drain and how there were people that said, "Oh well, we really don't want for you to be taking all of the best, brightest, and smartest out of Africa and draining Africa of their educated individuals, thinking like doctors and other people that can serve community there." And she said, "We just need to put this to bed because it's a bad idea. There are plenty of intelligent people, and we really just need to ensure more of them can rise up." And so I wondered if you have confronted a similar issue or thought point, even from some of your fundraising efforts.
Well, the idea of brain drain was relevant some years ago, say 10, 15, 20 years ago. The people leave India and then come and live in America, and then they don't come back. But
Mhm.
today, in a global scenario where everything is connected, and where it doesn't matter where I am talking to you from a remote village. So
That's
it
true.
doesn't matter any longer. So that's one change. And the children that are in America, for example, as I said, studying at all these great universities, they have a burning desire to transform their families. And the way they are going to do is to have good jobs wherever it might be. It could be in New York, it could be in India, in Bangalore, wherever it is, and they earn that money and help their families and transform society. So I myself was initially planning to start something in Africa. It didn't happen, and I ended up here. So my take on it is that if you have a heart and you want to help people, it doesn't matter whom you help, those who are in need. It could be in any country, and you can do that from any country.
Well, I love that. And I tend to agree with you. I think the access to technology has changed a lot of things. You're seeing that even wages across cultures are starting to increase. A lot of people employ virtual assistants now, and they're starting to earn what would be living wages here in the United States in some cases as well. So I think that that's all healthy. It's like we're moving in a better direction overall. Now, I know that this isn't your only philanthropic effort with the George Foundation. I understand you're also tackling things like lead contamination with Project Lead Free and even doing work in the medical field. Can you talk about these efforts?
Okay. When I spent the first few years, I realized that I was in a city, one of it's called the Silicon Valley of India, Bangalore. But the pollution was so high, and I was falling sick, coming from, relatively New Jersey, not having that much pollution, I guess. And I found out that
They
lead
call it the Garden State. It's pretty green, right?
right,
Like,
right.
when you're in what is it, New City or Jersey City, it's like, okay, yes, you're right there in this concentrated populace, but most of New Jersey is pretty beautiful.
Exactly, exactly. I was in actually Western New Jersey, Morristown area, and
Oh,
I lived there for 20 years or more. So it was wonderful. And then suddenly I come to this crowded city, and my eyes are burning and everything else. And I found out that they hadn't removed lead from gasoline. So I went back and met with CDC and US EPA and New York City pollution control people, environmental people. And they really taught me how to test for lead in children. The children are the ones who suffer most. So I imported a lot of equipment from the US to test blood. And CDC trained me on how to do it. And I came back, and then I appointed some 6, 7 hospitals to do the testing. And we did actually one of the largest blood testing. 22,000 children were tested, all over India. And CDC, World Bank, USEPA, WHO, everybody came for a conference along with some 25 other countries, sent their representatives for this conference on A, to find out how you can prevent this, and B, how you can treat it, and so on. It was an immense success. And government of India decided that it will do something about it. And the oil companies came to the conference and announced that within 18 months, they will remove lead from gasoline. So in year 2000, unleaded gasoline in India started disappearing. And World Bank took up our report and sent it to so many other countries. I don't know how many of them implemented their policies, so it had some effect there too. So that was one project. Then I got into one after the other. Social work in social work is like emotional quicksand. You get in get in there, you start going from one to another.
you can't help
I
yourself, I know. I wanna pause here for a moment, though, and talk about the lead issue because I think,
yeah,
especially younger people, they might not have an idea of what it was like before we had unleaded gasoline here in the United States. But the reason lead in gasoline was such a huge problem was that you would burn the gasoline, the lead particles end up in the air. Every time it rains, it comes down in the rainwater, it ends up in your food, it ends up in your groundwater, it ends up everywhere. And so this creates persistent, pervasive problems. you'd breathe it in. You had children with like more asthmatic issues. We see less of that now. I mean, people still have asthma. It's not like that whole system was completely eradicated. But I have to tell you, when I was a little girl, I mean, there were, I don't know, a dozen kids in my school who had to go around with an inhaler all the time. I don't see that as much anymore. So I think even in the course of a generation or two, because I'm in my late 40s and I have young children because I got my family start late. I guess it's about 2 generations ago, literally, right? We're not seeing those problems quite as much anymore. And environmental pollutants like that can really impact the health of the populace. It's really difficult to tease out, and it's difficult to eliminate the problems because often it's because you can't move the dump site, or you don't know where the toxins are leaching in from, or even what toxins are causing the problems. We're confronting these issues now with PFAS, or forever chemicals, because they are so persistent and invasive and have hit some of our water tables as well. I guess stay tuned for more on that. I'm likely to talk about it in the future.
Right. I just want to add to what you said. Everything you said is absolutely right. Lead is a peculiar harmful metal. It lodges in your brain, and then it affects your, IQ, and and so on. And children are the ones who have, and it's in the paint. New York City has a lot of lawsuits against the city and others apart where the lead painting. Okay. But anyway, I am no longer in that effort because after that, getting India unleaded gasoline, I left that and focused on other things and went back to the rural segment, where I found that the people, a good majority of people in villages are living below the poverty line. They are discriminated and so on. And we embarked on a number of social ventures there, building houses for the poor. When COVID started, we found that they lost jobs, so we started distributing food every month. And you'll see a mile long line waiting to get dry rations, not cooked food. Dry, they could use it for weeks at a time. That much quantity we would put in a bag and give it to them for the family. So I embarked on, and then we started a medical clinic. Um, Actually, that clinic didn't take any inpatients. It's an outpatient clinic. People who have some problem, they come there first. We intervene, and then if we can't handle it, we send them to a hospital some distance away. And so I embarked on various things. And by the way, I also got into journalism. I thought that one of the problems is the press wasn't doing its job well enough. I don't want to make enemies of journalists, but they were not challenging what people write, the governments or policies and so on. So for variety of reasons, you all know why they don't necessarily write. And so I started a journalism school, and 25 years nearly I ran it, and I decided finally I will get out of that and focus entirely on rural India, the problems of poverty, actually rural and urban poverty, and how the caste system can be broken. That's where I am spending, and my son Ajit is very much involved. And one day I'll hand over to him. No, it doesn't have to be him. There are many others who are part of this effort. Such lovely people who have joined me. There are over 120 people who are part of our effort, and they are committed to the cause. And so, with them, Ajit will be able to carry this mission. And we have opened a second Shanti Bhavan. So, we are doubling our numbers. And before I go, I hope I'll start a couple of more if the funding allows me to do it, and then he can take on from there. The need is so big. 300 million people who belong to the caste, this hierarchy, and and I guess that number will increase. And just because they are able to get a job somewhere in a, as a laborer somewhere or something like that, it doesn't mean that their life is changing. They don't have the opportunity to send the children to good schools. They don't break the cycle of poverty and discrimination. That's what I am trying to do.
Well, it's a noble effort. I wanted to ask you, especially given that now you've opened a second school, how many children are you actively supporting at any given time?
That school takes only preschoolers, only at the age of 4, because we have realized that, by the way, it's a residential school. We need to get them at a very young age. If you don't get them at a young age, we can't change them very much. So we take them at the age of 3.5 or 4. In the second school, we take 30 children. First school takes 28 because it was built some 30 years ago. So the room sizes are small, classroom sizes smaller. 30 children. But remember, now 30 years later, a lot of them have graduated. They have gone on to college. We educate them in college too. All the way, whatever education they want. Masters. One kid is actually in Hofstra in New York, Long Island, doing a clinical psychology PhD. Amazing things, have
Yeah.
happened. These
So you're talking
kids are,
about you take them in at 4 years old, 3.5, 4 years
yes,
old, and then you're with them for their academic journey until they get placement somewhere else. That's kind of my understanding.
correct. Until they get jobs, good jobs, professional careers in good companies. And then they are able to take from there themselves. And if they ever come back for higher studies, they can do it themselves. They don't need our support because they already earned enough money, or they get scholarships.
Now,
So
do you have, government support at all? I'm just curious because I don't know how the Indian school system works, so I wondered if there was some level of governmental support, especially for those elementary school years. That's something you would typically see here in the United States.
right. I don't want to upset anyone in the government who is listening to this program, but I made a decision that one of the problems in being able to offer a good program is the government's interference. They will tell
Mm,
you, if you take even $1 from the government, then they'll tell you that you have to follow their curriculum. You have
mm.
to, do all kinds of things, and they will come and inspect you, and then to get approvals, all kinds of things happen. I don't want to get into this discussion because, corruption and other kinds of things are very,
And so
very.
you've made the choice to remain independent
I
and
made a
private.
choice. I don't want to touch government money. I
Mm,
want to do it myself initially. And then I said, okay, there are enough well meaning people out there in the world. All I have to do is to show them that I've done a good job and come ask them to come and see what we have done. And then uh, even without seeing, lots of people have come forward to help us. This become a universal mission. It's not mine alone. The school is a global school. We have at any given time 10 to 15 volunteers from all over the world come to spend time, 1 month to 1 year. A good majority are from America, from good schools. And good colleges and so on. So it is a universal place. But the important point I want to make is that it is a mission that we are trying to carry. It's not about Indian children or anything like that. If an African child wants to come here and study, I'm more than glad to take, as long as that child is very poor, from a very poor family. So, I mean, the visa and so many other problems exist. So, I have to be, they have to find a way here. So, it's a global institution, and I'm hoping that others will open similar institutions.
well, I love that. Now, I wanted to just offer you the opportunity, as I do with most of my guests, to, you know, how do I put this typically? If there is a question that you wish I'd asked that perhaps I haven't, you could ask and answer it. Or if there were particular thoughts that you wanted to leave our audience with for them to take away with them, you could go ahead and do that as well. The floor is yours.
Okay. The most important thing I want to emphasize is that we all have a human obligation to help other people who don't have the means. And we talk about compassion, but I find that compassion is not enough. Compassion in action. You must be prepared to put your compassion into an action, whether through money, through time, some way you have to make a difference to the lives of people. That is a human obligation. There is no escaping religion, anything else, no way to escape it. You can pray all day, but if you don't help other people, is not going to make any difference. So that's one point I want to say. And I tell the children who are graduating from Shanti Bhavan that you have a moral duty to carry at least 100 others with you in your lifetime. And that then it will multiply. So that is one important point I want to make. There are many points with the time limitation I won't. And in terms of, I am available if someone wants to ask me something, they can get on to the website that we have, Shanti Bhavan website. I don't know whether you put up the name of the website,
Yeah,
but
I will
my name.
include all the links in show notes, including how to find the Netflix series just to make it
Okay,
easy for
okay. I'll
everybody.
be happy to help others who want to
Yeah.
start something like that, or others who want to reach out and help these types of families.
Mhm.
I'm always there. And Ajit is always there in the US. He lives in Seattle.
Mm. And you are active on most of the social channels as well, the Shanti Bhavan
Yes,
School.
yes.
So those links will also be provided with show notes just to make it easy for everybody. You don't have to scribble down the spelling, and you can go directly to that on whatever platform you're listening to this on or watching on YouTube. And I will also say that these resources and more, including reflections on prior episodes like my interview with Lydia Kamunto Bazire of 8B Education Investments, will be included. So I always encourage people to check out the page on our website, circleb.co. And I want to say something in reference to what you just shared, that whole pay it forward times 100. I mean, I've always come from that perspective. And just to share for a moment, something personal for me. You know, I grew up as a poor kid in America. And when you grow up without financial resources in America, it often means that you don't get to participate in after school programs or anything extra. It's just not available to you. And in my case, I was very interested in the sciences, but we didn't have a lot of money. And my fifth grade teacher wanted me to go to science camp in the summer. And he chose to foot the bill for me because we couldn't afford it. That one simple action to me made so much difference. I don't think that he could ever have truly known. It showed me that somebody had faith in my scholastic abilities. It enabled me to open my mind and explore the natural world in a different way over the course of the summer. I mean, I had access to a microscope and we did things like dissect squid. I mean, it doesn't sound like it's incredible, but like even how do you set a trap for yellow jackets and then analyzing the yellow jackets, which is a species of bee that can be kind of prevalent in the summer, to even going to the riverfronts and looking at beaver dams. Like I didn't even realize we had beavers that close to our home. So we're seeing how they impact the ecosystem. And it was a
Right.
very outdoor adventure world, but it enabled me to integrate some of the learnings from the classroom into the open space. And so now every year, I donate funds to a similar charity that
Right.
enables children that are in underprivileged communities or that have economic disparity in communities around Oregon, Washington, California to do the same thing, to be able to go to a 6-week science camp in the summer. And to me, it's something that means a lot because I know the impact it had on me personally.
Well,
So
I cannot allow this program to end without saying I admire the work you're doing. You're spreading the word through the most powerful media. That's very, a lot of people who hear these types of programs might reach out and help other people. So you are doing a wonderful job and admire your effort. And I want to thank you for asking me to speak on this medium.
well, thank you for joining
And
me. This has been my pleasure.
yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. I know you're 45 minutes and I see 45 minutes happening.
It's not a hard close. We don't have to oh, no. It's if you had anything else you wanted to say, you could feel free to do so. I just like to give people the experience saying, we record typically 45 minutes. It can go an hour. I mean, it's okay. But
I
thank you.
just want to say that if you get a chance, go to Netflix,
Mm.
look at Daughters of Destiny, and you'll really enjoy. And the whole family can watch it. It won the programming, television programming with a Conscience Award. It was one of those programs. That's something I ask you to do. You can look up the website. You can Google on my name, Abraham George, Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, easy to remember. Abraham- and then You will learn more about it. And finally, if you get a chance, come over and be our guest and come and spend time with the children of
Yeah, that would
Shanti.
be amazing. I can envision a day in which I'm able to do that, but probably after graduate school is complete. I've always wanted to go to India. My father is married to an Indian woman, so I have this sinking thing in the back of my mind where I'm saying, I want to go
Oh,
with them and see her family and, experience the cultures of India from within it. So I think
right.
that would be really
Wonderful.
amazing.
You have a lot of Indian connections, it looks like. Very good.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, Corinne.
It's always such a treat for me to be able to engage with someone as purpose driven as Dr. Abraham George. I love what he's doing with the George Foundation. I love what he's doing with this school. And ultimately, I'm given a screaming endorsement to his show, The Daughters of Destiny. It is very revealing, hopeful, and it helps you to understand the sorts of challenges that we run into when we have too much wealth disparity. Now, while you always found a lot of really great information on Care More Be Better's dedicated site, that has now moved over to circleb.co. And the reason I've done that is to really engage with people to think more about their consumption. So this website only offers eco-conscious goods, some of them from around the world, things that are made from natural fibers and wood, as opposed to plastics and petrochemicals. And while you visit that site, I hope that you'll join our newsletter. So for every new subscriber that joins our circle, I'm planting a tree through collaboration with Forest Planet. Now, you've heard from Hank, their founder, on this podcast before, so I'll link to that episode as well with show notes. We're really working to make a greener future. This is part of the change that I know I can affect. And so for every single person that joins our newsletter, just an email a week or so, then we are planting a tree. Circle B is a cause before commerce, education resource, and marketplace. So we offer all those eco-friendly products I just mentioned from companies that do seek to do everything right. The responsibly made products will include things like fiber clothing and textiles, plastic-free personal care items, a few supplements also that are seeking to reduce your reliance on plastics. Things like gardening supplies so you can grow your own food and do so without excessive water use. And even items that help you reduce your kitchen waste, including my favorite nut milk maker, the Almond Cow. Plus, we have some really, really perfect gifty items like organic chocolate and fair trade coffee, beautiful wood designs from cutting boards to art pieces, and even some sustainable jewelry. Now, as a 1% for the Planet partner, 1% of all sales benefits Earth First charities. And right now, we're focused on planting more trees. So join our circle and let's build that greener future. Thank you, listeners and watchers, now and always, for being a part of this pod and this community. Because together we really can do so much more. We can care more, we can be better, and we can improve access to education for all people and build a more equal society. With schools like Shanti Bhavan, we're already on our way. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Care More, Be Better, a podcast for social good. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share with your friends to help us reach more people and spread more social good.